It is my great honor to welcome Dr. Sandra Alfonsi to Texas, and especially to San Angelo. Let me give you a little background on her. Dr. Sandra Alfonsi was the director of National Hadassah's Curriculum Watch and chair of the Hadassah Academic Advisory Board for 25 years. She has been a reviewer of K through 12 United States history, social studies, and global and world history textbooks since the mid-1990s. Dr. Alfonsi has been the Senior Academic Fellow for Truth in Textbooks, formerly known as Truth in Texas Textbooks, since its inception in 2013. She has trained well over 200 social studies textbooks reviewers, and through their efforts, they have reviewed over 100 social study textbooks that are now being used in a dozen or more states. The work of the volunteers and her efforts combined have identified thousands of errors on a wide range of topics. Because of these efforts, states and individual school districts are armed with facts and details to either obtain changes or block books from being purchased at the local and state level. She is the founder and director of Textbook Alert, an independent think tank whose goal is to ensure standards of education which are historically accurate as well as ethnically and culturally unbiased. Dr. Alfonsi heads the Textbook Alert Advisory Board, which reviews textbooks for errors and omissions in the areas of Judaism, the Holocaust, Israel, and Islam. She has recently moved to Jerusalem and has been approached to share her knowledge and experience with several universities in Jerusalem. Please give a warm San Angelo welcome to my dear friend who now lives in Israel, Dr. Sandra Alfonsi.
I'm really very proud and honored to be here. Katz thought you would be interested about how I just suddenly picked up and moved to Jerusalem. It took me 33 years. That's suddenly in her book. But I'm what is known as a Torah Jew. That is, I don't consider myself Orthodox conservative or that. I follow the Torah. I'm an observant Jewish woman. I was an observant Jewish child, and I'm now mature. And I'm still observant, and I still follow the Torah and the precepts that I grew with. And the journey to, Kat asked me to talk a few minutes about it because I don't know how many people you know. Aliyah means it's from the root of the word to go up. And it's not like you just take a moving and you just move. To make Aliyah is a step towards the fulfillment of the promise of Hashem, of God, and of moving upwards to be able to fulfill the promise of Judaism. So I took that very seriously. I went to Israel for the first time in 1985, and I decided then that I was going to spend my life in Israel. It took me 33 years. I got there in 2018. I don't regret any of it because I spent 33 years working for Israel, working for America. I'm a university professor. I teach French language and literature. I teach Italian. And I've spent my life devoted to education, but devoted to my people, and devoted to my religion, and devoted to God. So I thought if it only took me 33 years to fulfill Aliyah, to go from Washington, D.C. to New York, to the Poconos, and finally to Jerusalem, that really wasn't a very long trip. It just was a lot of effort, but when one of the security guards in El Al said to me, "What took you so long to do this?" So I said, "It's called life." And that's what it was. It was life, but it was a very productive life following what I believe in. And I'm standing here because what I believe in is the state of Texas, and and the fact that I truly believe that Texas is what we call the lone state standing in this battle for truth in textbooks. It's the only state that has reached out a hand to twin itself with the other one-star state, which is Israel. It's the only state that requested me to come and speak on behalf of a nation to its members of its Board of Education. So I thought 33 years I've invested to arrive where I really belong, which was in front of the State Board of Education, to protect my homeland, my people, my religion, and then by extension, I take very seriously the fact that there's Judaism and there's Christianity, and therefore it's my pleasure, it's my job, it's my responsibility, because as goes Judaism, so will go Christianity. And I feel very strongly about that. So that is the promise which I made. And like everything else, we have this on Rosh Hashanah, on the Jewish New Year, we're able, if we have not kept vows that we've made to God, we are able to make those vows again, but you cannot really go break vows to another person. But I made a vow early in my life that I would be as good a Jew. I didn't even know what it meant, because it's a constant pursuit of something. So when I decided I would go make Aliyah in 2017, I went just for a visit, and a friend of mine said, it's time, and I was sitting at a cafe drinking coffee on Ben Yehuda Street, and I said, it's time. And I just going through the bureaucracy of moving, and I picked up, and I went, and I have an apartment, and I'm doing my thing. And what surprised me were the questions from the officials who interviewed me for my Aliyah. They asked me outright, are you still going to do the work that you do on the textbooks, because you protect us in America? So I said, I will do them from Israel, and I will protect America, and I will protect Israel, and I will protect the people that are most dear to me. So that's what Aliyah is in one state, in one sense. The other is, and I find the spirituality, Kat and I had a long talk about that, I find the spirituality here that it vibrates. And I've been all my life in an integrated, mixed society, and I find that the type of religion that Kat has and that comes from her is really what I wanted to explain about why I made Aliyah and why I have to be where I now am. I believed since I was a child that my soul was at the foot of Sinai when the people were created. And when we pray during Passover at the Seder and we speak about all of the souls were assembled, I have believed that all my life, that my soul before it came from God and ended up in me, was at the foot of Sinai with all of the people. So I had this problem of the body made in America, but the soul made at the foot of Sinai. And I thought every time I went to Israel, because this was my 18th visit that turned into when I moved, but each time I went to Israel, I felt like my body and my soul were united for the first time. And so when I got off the plane, I became for the first time, and I'm not ashamed to say it, I became for the first time a whole person, because my soul and my body are together where they belong. And what happened in the foot of Sinai happened when I got off the plane. And when I got off the plane, I became a citizen of Israel. So when I consider that I am a Jew, I'm an American Jew, I'm an Israeli Jew, and I have two countries. I have America where the body was born, and now I have Israel where the soul was born. And that's why and how I picked up. And I really did just pick up. I said, I'm going, bye folks. And I got on the plane and I went, and I've not said, what did I do yet? I mean, sometimes I know I will say that because my apartment, my belongings finally got here, so there are cartons from the floor to the ceiling, and I go like this to try to walk. One day I couldn't find the bed, I haven't been able to get on the sofa, so I said, don't ever say, what have you done? So I changed it. When I look around, I say, boy, is this a mess. A mess, and it's my body and my soul and my country, but when I was asked, is there any way you could be at the State Board of Education on November the 13th. That is where I was. That is where I didn't wage a battle because I found that the words of truth carried a lot of weight with the State Board members. And I could see the change. I could see that they listened to me. And it was a marvelous experience. But that is my voyage as it's a voyage as a Jewish woman. It's a voyage that I realized was to put my soul and my body in one place, because that leads to schizophrenia when they're separated. So I am a very happy, very tired Jewish woman. And I really thank Kat. I thank the people of Texas, and I thank the willingness of this state to be different. And being different is what will hopefully resolve all of the tremendous problems in the country, which I consider being brought unto us by people who are sheep and don't look up and don't look around. So I thank you for having me here, and there is my journey that Kat, I mean, no one has ever said to me, well, I have to reword that. Some have said to me, why in the world did you do that? And I give them the same answer. But to be honest, to stand in a church of this type, where there is a very awesome spirituality around, and I've been in a lot of churches and a lot of synagogues, and there's a lack of spirituality and a lot of religiosity, and I'm in a church right now where there's no religiosity and there's spirituality. So I'm really happy to be here, and I'm happy to bring my message, whatever that may turn into be. But I will tell you very honestly that the greatest joy that I have in life was being born to my parents, who gave me the greatest gift in life, which is my Judaism. And they gave me the strength, and they gave me the wisdom, and they gave me their wisdom to pursue it. And they gave me an education, and I have done my best not to fail them, not to fail my education. And in no way within my power will I ever fail my God. So that is what my Aliyah means. Now we will get to the important things. I mean, I'm really glad someone she wanted me to say it. There it is. It's really not a story. It's just life, and that's what it is. It's my life, and I look at who I am and what I am and my age and my stature, everything, and I say, very few people are blessed to have a second chance in everything. And I have a second chance at the life, and it's a good life. It'll be difficult, but very few people just get the ability and this fiber and the strength, and to recognize a chance, a second chance, and to take it are two different things. So I'm very blessed that I'm stubborn. I'm very stubborn, and I'm very focused, and very tired, but I am who I am supposed to be. And that, when it will be the end of my life, will be what I will be able to say. I served my God, I served my religion, I served my people, and I spend my life as the person I'm supposed to be. And that is how I feel. You know, I was looking at that picture of me up there, and I'm like, I've got to stop tilting my head. I'm looking at all of this, and I thought, 25 years and all the work on the textbooks, that's my segue in, because with a BA and an MA and a PhD, a university professor, as a couple of you know, that was blacklisted at Fordham University because I was asked to be the faculty advisor for the Middle Eastern Studies Club, because my students were naive enough to say, well, Dr. Alfonsi is the only person we know is, a Jew and an Arab can sit down and talk. And Fordham University is permeated with Arab petrodollars, and the head of the Middle Eastern Studies department didn't want me to be the faculty advisor, so he blacklisted me as I'm an unsuitable faculty advisor because I'm an extremist, because I am a Jew. And he was stupid enough to have it in writing and not understand the loyalty of students. So I am, if you want to call it correctly, I am an extremist. I believe in right and wrong, and I don't vacillate. And it makes it difficult, and the work that I do with the textbooks is perhaps the ultimate weapon that could be put into a person's hand who wants to preserve and save and fight. And this is, I do it, and I do it with love and passion and a lot of Tylenol. So now, so that's who I am. That's how I ended up in Israel to start my life. I don't look at it that I've gone to Israel to end my life. I mean, I've gone to Israel to start my life and to do this portion of my life. The textbooks I was handed out to you. I was really, when Kat was driving me yesterday and telling me about the school system here and that your children don't have books, and that you don't have curriculum information and you don't have this and you don't have that. So I said there's something that is not, it's not good, because to me those are the signs of an agenda, that it is a way in which to keep hold of the education system. So I thought, how am I going to, usually you start saying when I talk, the parents need to look at the textbooks, and if you don't have children and you don't have grandchildren, you have neighbors, what is important, that you have to be the eyes and the ears for the child. So when Kat told me about the lack of the textbooks, I thought, I have to do something rapidly so that when we're speaking and we're talking, you'll understand what it is that are in the textbooks. And when you do understand it, then you will know why the State Board of Education and of the 15 members, we had a very important vote on Israel. And that was what I was called for on the TEECs. And we won. And we won 11 out of 15, because there were some that believed in Israel, but there were some that listened for the first time to the truth and the history. And that's the value, and that's the importance. And it's not just, this is not just about Israel, because I do the U.S. history textbooks, and I try to correct what has happened to American exceptionalism. There are topics far beyond Israel, but they're all interrelated, because you cannot look for truth and say, does it matter here, but it matters over there. And the books are very bad, so I prepared this thing, which is, I put troubling trends in the U.S. social studies and world history textbooks. And I want to talk to that, to what the points that are on here, so that you will know that if you ever get a textbook in front of you and you can look, you know what you're looking at. It isn't even a question of what you're looking for. Some of this, unless you know what you are looking at, you don't pick it up. And it is very serious. And the first one, as far as I'm concerned, as a Jew, as an American Jew, as growing up in a totally what I call integrated, correctly society, where Christian and Jewish children, we played together, we learned about each other's customs, and we lived together knowing that at some time there may be problems, but we were strong enough in the knowledge that at the end of the day we were all the same, and that the differences are culture, their practice, but no matter how you look at it, we pray for the same thing, and how we get our direction of our prayer to God depends on the nature of the religion. And that is what has kept me very balanced, because on my academic advisory board, I have a professor, Paula Fredrickson, who is the leading scholar in early Christianity, because never doubt that if there is the attempt, and it's quite successful, in changing how Judaism is taught, not far behind is what is happening in the textbooks for Christianity. And the Judeo-Christian tradition of the United States, I had battles with Macmillan and Company, publishing house, 15, 20 years ago, because they took a hyphen out. They said, it's just, you don't need it, it's grammar. I said, oh no, because that Judeo-Christian is the equality promised, freedom of religion in the formation in the Founding Fathers. That hyphen comes from the Founding Fathers. And that hyphen means that Judaism and Christianity together on the equal plane, that is how we are, that is how this country was built, and that basically is the basis and the root of freedom of religion. Freedom of religion doesn't mean that religion A has the freedom to beat up religion B. Freedom of religion means that the individual has the freedom to choose and practice the religion that he or she follows or decides to follow. So the first of the troubling trends, and I really consider the first and last, I put them in the order of how I found them in the textbooks and how they actually represent what is being destroyed in this country and which will bring down, and I do not doubt for a moment that if it continues like this and we do not have an intellectual revolution whereby we demand things to be returned to the way they're supposed to be and history returned, that is an intellectual revolution. You do not need guns for that. You do not have to kill people, you have to teach history. So I put them in the order in which I find them in the book, textbooks, and the order that I feel it's really tremendously dangerous to us. And in our textbooks, the U.S. history textbooks, when I started, these problems were from 6th to 12th grade. They are trickled down, they are now in the 4th grade textbooks. So we have really had the fabric of the, I know we are a constitutional republic. We use the word democracy for the equality. But the fabric of this nation, which was, we are a melding pot, yes or no? We don't have to all become one and the same. We have to be individual but equal. So, and that was the concepts of the Founding Fathers. Not that we should be in a melting pot and come out to look like something that you dip your candy into. It's not that idea of melting into one entity. It's the idea of melding, of working together. Retain your individuality, and that individuality, when together, makes the strength of this country. So for me, the first thing, what I call the minimalization of the Judeo-Christian tradition of America, and the promotion of the concept of the Judeo-Christian Islamic tradition of American society. That is where we are now. We have minimalized the Judeo-Christian tradition, denied what the Founding Fathers believed, taken out of the books, Jefferson's, and the attention to the Bible. I mean, I was present at these board meetings when it was a major success that we managed to put we got Moses back into the textbooks. And and you see in the articles that again, they're crazed, but this time there were two people who had the wisdom to speak, not about Moses as a biblical fixture and a creation from the Bible. And he stood there and he said, you can go to your Sunday school, you can go to your Hebrew school, you can go to your church, you can go to your synagogue, and you learn about Moses. Moses is the lawgiver. And Moses as the lawgiver was the person, was the image that the Founding Fathers had. And then a woman stood up, a lawyer, and she gave the entire rationale of the importance of Moses as a lawgiver in the foundation of our Constitution. And with the one, there out of 15, there was one vote against, and he voted against everything that should not have been voted against. But Moses is back in his position, because it's not as a role, in the position of the lawgiver, and in the state of Connecticut, in the forming of the country in New England, it was the state of Connecticut that brought Moses into its constitutional deliberations, and this person researched it, and that is how there was this major victory. You know, I always smile and I'm like, okay, now we have Moses, we'll work on the Ten Commandments next. But we have Moses in, but recognizing the importance of the Constitution, because our Constitution, there's no way to deny it's under attack. And it's under attack by people that first of all, that are followers of the Sharia law, we can say that. But there is an entire body of Americans to whom the Constitution means absolutely nothing. So we find that in the textbooks. But when you minimize the Judeo-Christian tradition of America, on the other side, there's the promotion, and there's a Professor John Esposito from Georgetown University who created, I mean, you don't create the Judeo-Christian tradition because you can prove it all the way back in history to the Founding Fathers. But he created the concept that, oh no, it's not Judeo-Christian. It's Judeo-Christian Islamic tradition of American society. And that is what is being taught. And that is what is being put into the textbooks. And that comes from John Esposito at Georgetown University, and you know the importance of Georgetown University. Yes, there are millions of Arab petrol dollars gone across the country into the universities since 1975. But for Georgetown University, for America, that is one of the greatest dangers, because that is the university that trains our diplomats for the State Department. And if you ever wonder why the State Department is as it is when they're coming out of a school as important as Georgetown, there you have an answer, that you have an entire body of people that have created the Judeo-Christian Islamic tradition of American society. And the Founding Fathers, first of all, the Founding Fathers had a deep hatred for Islam. You only have to study the history of the Barbary pirates to know, and to know exactly, that there was no way that this country had an Islamic tradition. No way. So that is the first thing, and that troubles me, because, all of this troubles me, but it troubles me because it involves the destruction of the two religions. When you do this, you are destroying the Judaism and you are destroying the Christianity. You're opening it for two things. I mean, nobody mentions this, and I'm mentioning it because I believe that the growth in atheism in this country parallels this. And as that grows, the lack of defense of the Constitution, all of this wraps together. So this first one, minimizing Judeo-Christian tradition and adding and promoting that this country has an Islamic tradition, it's very dangerous. The second, for me, as a Jew, and it's very important, that is in the textbooks. Now we hear about Holocaust denial, and then we hear about the Holocaust revisionism. I find it much easier to go after a publishing house and say, you know that you left the Holocaust out, or you know that Macmillan had 6 million Jews as collateral damage of World War II. That is how he explained it. And that was, it took many years of a battle on that, because collateral damage is when a building falls. Collateral damage is not the extermination of 6 million people, which if we add in all the others, it's the extermination of 14 million people. And with the Holocaust revisionism and the extermination of the Jews, it was the eradication for the purpose of eradicating completely the existence of Jews. So the Holocaust revisionism is bad enough, but we now have, with with the force of Islam. We have another revision, Holocaust revisionism, which is the Islamist Holocaust revisionism. It doesn't deny that the Holocaust took place. It says that Israel is an illegitimate entity that was created only because of the Holocaust. And to further that, it goes in and says that David Ben-Gurion actually allowed Hitler, and made the agreement with Hitler that he could eradicate the Jews in order that the Jews that were there would seize the land from the Arabs. So you have the Holocaust denial, and then you have this revisionism which not only have to fix that, but the illegitimacy of the state of Israel, and then the fact that David Ben-Gurion, who was the founder of the state, that he would have, not in a dream, gone over and made an agreement with Hitler and let the trains take the people to the extermination camps in order for the Jews to steal the land from the indigenous people who are not the indigenous people. The Jews are the indigenous people and the Arabs are not the indigenous people. So that's a major issue. Now, I do work on this. I decided that this was a good topic. It was nice. The elimination of the contributions of American Jews to American history. Because you know American history, you know the name Chaim Solomon. He financed the American Revolution for Abraham Lincoln. We have, across the board, we have the contributions that American Jews have made to our history. If you go to the Statue of Liberty and you look at the poem at the base of the Statue of Liberty, written by Emma Lazarus, I mean, these are just token things. I mean, there are so many examples. Well, they're out of the textbooks. Chaim Solomon is not in any textbook. Emma Lazarus, the poem is there if they want to do the Statue of Liberty, but her name is not there. David Dubinsky, who started the International Workers Garment Unit, and that entire period of history, it's gone. It's like we weren't there, but what's there is a paragraph that said that the Jews that came over at the turn of the century from Europe were illiterate, they were impoverished, and that they were not illiterate. They may have been impoverished, but they were definitely not illiterate. But the entire essence of what came over turned out on, I mean, if every Jew that came over during immigration had ended up on the east side, the streets would have caved in. But that's where we ended up. They were all push carts. They all did push carts, and then other things. So that's an area. Then the next one, it takes all of us. What's been eliminated, the elimination of the contributions of the American Jews to the civil rights movement, adding to the racial tension that's here. It's very, very critical, because we have amazing racial tensions to the point where that no one responds now when Farrakhan opens his mouth. No one responds to any of the blatant anti-Semitism and hatred in the African American, or depending on the origins, whether they're the Black Americans or the African Americans, because I'm very careful to inquire from everyone, because some people have said we are Americans. You're a white American. I had one of my students went like this, Dr. Alfonsi, you're a white American. He said, pinch my cheek, and I went, he says, I'm an American and I'm black. You're a white American, I'm a black American. And I said, God bless my students. I mean, they're university kids that have no common sense, but when they need it, it comes right out. So this problem of the contributions that we made to the civil rights movement, the fact that the Jewish lawyers helped were the backbone that founded the NAACP. All of this, that we marched, and we marched seriously. I come from Washington, D.C., where the civil rights movement, we were the first place where the school system was integrated. So all of this has been written out of the textbooks, and instead, Pearson Prentice Hall wrote a textbook called African American History, and it was used in every ninth grade class in Philadelphia and the surroundings and their past little cities and all. And the problem with that book is, and I went to Raleigh, North Carolina, to meet with the senior black senator in the education down there. And I sat with him and I said, we're not filtering words now, are we? And he said, no. I said, I need your state and I need you and I need a contingent of, and I said, how should I address you, as African Americans, Black Americans? He said, we don't even know who we are, and that's what the system is doing to us. We have no identity. So I said to him, he said, what do you need us to do? I said, I need a protest, and I need a very strong, written, academically sound, nonviolent protest on this textbook. And I showed him the textbook. He said to me, what's wrong with it? I said, it's ghettoizing all of your black youth again. It's putting your black children, your children, back into the ghetto. It's dividing and it's putting an end to all of the civil rights gains, and it's going to return a level of hatred whereby there's going to be a split between the races, and then a third party will come in and we're going to be decimated. And he worded legislation, and the book finally, but you can have a book removed, but it doesn't, you can't take what's been taught from it. And it's very difficult, and the publishing houses have no morality, no ethics, because the bottom line of the publishing houses, it's the dollar, and the dollar that is, unfortunately, the dollar, or really right now, since '75, it's been the era of petrodollar. And we have a major problem in the civil rights movement, and so my first experience of working with the State Board of Education was in Houston about 9 years ago, when at that time anyone who was not a resident of Texas could not give testimony in front of the State Board of Education. So when I got the phone call, and could I come here to the State Board, I said, I can't testify, I'm not a citizen of the state. He said, it doesn't matter, you're a citizen of the state, you're testifying. But when I was in Houston, I met with 7 black ministers. Gentlemen, well-spoken, the kind where you could see the love and the concern in their eyes. And they said to me, we will make an arrangement with you. You promise us, and he said, no, us, my people, you promise us that you will correct the civil rights movement in the Texas textbooks, and we promise you that we will protect Israel. And that bond has never gone away. And it was because I continued to do the civil rights. I had the same thing said to me when I went to speak at the Holocaust Museum in Houston, and they were still survivors. And they said, whatever we have to do, you must promise us on your life that you will never stop correcting the Holocaust in the textbooks. But the agreement with the ministers in Houston, and they have held to their word, and it was so urgent. It was and it remains urgent, only now we have tremendous forces working to drive us apart, to create the enmity and to make it. What has happened is it not only has made the rift, but there's a level of violence that never was. And and I'm speaking honestly, Black Lives Matter, no they don't, not to that group. They're being manipulated, they're being used as scapegoats, and the hatred that they're creating towards the Black Lives Matter, I fear for the black lives of those who are trying to live as citizens of this country. So, this is all of this is in our textbooks. This is not a philosophical conversation. These are things that come straight out of the textbooks. So after that, and you find things happening, and you look at the violence and the nature of the violence, and I mean to be so stupid as to say that this violent anti-Semitism is due to Donald Trump. The racial tension and the attacks on the blacks are due to Donald Trump. What happened during the years that preceded? What happened to all of this? But it's in the textbooks, and it's being taught, And if we do get another edition of the same textbook, it isn't better, it's worse. So these are things that happen. Then the delegitimization of the state of Israel. I mean, it is not an illegitimate state, and it didn't steal any land. And the thing about it is that the saying is, conceived in sin and born in bloodshed. And that is what is being taught about Israel. And if God created the Holy Land, and if that is the biblical Holy Land, and it was conceived in sin, then you have a very dangerous dialogue going to the foundations of Judaism and Christianity. And Jesus does not come out unscathed in the textbooks. He does not come out unscathed in the textbooks. Neither does the history of Christianity retain what it's supposed to have. So we have a major one with the attack on the state of Israel. It's very, very dangerous because of all the other nation states. I mean, if good for the goose is good for the gander, and you look at what other countries have done, and you have them, conceived in sin and born in bloodshed, that to me is the most horrible verbiage that you can have, because it calls upon the handwork of God in the creation of that land and the giving it to the Jewish people. And then you look at the United Nations that has proclaimed that there is no tie of the Jewish people, not to the Temple Mount, not to any of the places. And then when they take over, they build their mosque on top, and it's like it disappears. So it's critical, because as we go, so goes Christianity, and only Israel has protected the rights of the Christians, because they are part of they're the people. So I find it very difficult. The next one is where we are, and that's the stylization or sanitization. The best word for it, if we don't use those two words, is it's the whitewashing of Islam. It's the whitewashing of Islam, the history and the tenets of Islam. It's not just the history, it's the beliefs and everything. That the whitewashing of what is in the Quran, the constant saying that it's after 9/11, the President Bush could come out and call it a religion of peace, and I looked and I saw what had been done to my country, and looked at the gaping holes, because I lived in Queens and I would go across the bridge every day and see the Twin Towers. I came home the same day that it happened, and there was just smoke billowing up from the holes in the ground. This is the religion of peace. So this stylization, the whitewashing, this is something which is critical, and it's in all the textbooks. And it's very dangerous, because memory is short, knowledge is even shorter. So when you have this being taught, and you have it done in such a way that it looks so nice, it's the same. They build this equivalency to God, to Jesus, and to Allah, and they're not the same. And they bring the equivalency that the Quran and Sharia law is the same as the Talmud and the Tanakh, and it's in writing, and so it gives a legitimacy that is very, very dangerous. And this is what is in the textbooks. This is, I'm repeating this. This is not I'm not doing a philosophical conversation, since you don't see the books, and I see a lot of them, over and over and over. I'm telling you that it's not a fluke. It's not, you find one thing and you never see it again, so you say, it's okay. Then, the next one, the presentation of certain aspects of the Judeo-Christian heritage of American society. They claim that it's a source of bias towards the followers of Islam. Now, one of the main problems is that everything that is done is biased towards Islam. It's biased towards the Muslims. I'm very careful to refer when referring to this, to refer to them as the Muslims, because we're talking about those who are the followers of the religion. Arabs actually, that terminology actually is the landmass from which the people came. They came out of the Arabian Peninsula. They are the Arabs. So when I'm dealing with Islam, I make sure to refer to those who practice the religion. And when I'm referring to the Arab nations, that those Arab nations, most of them follow Islam, but they are Arab nations because it came out of the Arabian Peninsula. Now, what I saw at the State Board was that the Muslims have adopted the persona of victimization. They're victims, and it's the. But what I saw, and it leads into this because I know the Palestinian narrative, but I had never been in a place to hear it pronounced and to hear it spoken. And they not only do the victimization, they now have adopted all of the language and the philosophy of bullying. So everything, we almost lost the vote, and then it came out really well, but the problem was, oh no, if you teach about the Arab-Israeli conflict and you say that the Arab world was responsible, and I made the presentation that actually the Arab world and the Arab League created the Arab-Israeli conflict in 46 and 47, and it's still going on in 2018, and the board members picked up my language about the Arab League, but they, in their presentation, oh no, you can't teach that, because we will be bullied, our children will be bullied. So if you teach lies about Israel, nobody's going to be bullied, but if you teach the truth about Islam, the Muslim children, they will be bullied, and so we now have the victimization plus bullying, and bullying is a major problem in the textbooks and in the TEKs because you're trying to create equality and to eliminate bullying, and you're trying to teach children to behave like human beings and not to bully the weak, and all of a sudden you have this group picking up that vocabulary. So it's a major problem. Then the next one, the use of novels as propaganda or proselytization, because they're given readers, and with the textbooks comes in they were recommended reading. Now it has become required reading, which goes along with the flawed textbooks, and it goes into the teaching. So you have now books like concerning the Palestinians, and they're beautiful little fiction books. They're very easy to read, but they're not fiction. And it's like the names have been changed to protect the not so innocent. But it's used in the classroom for propaganda and to proselytize, and it's with those textbooks. Now, the marginalization of such ethnic groups as the Latino Americans and Asian Americans through the elimination of their contributions, we were just making some headway on making the Latino Americans part of the mainstream. The same thing with the Asian Americans. They are now being marginalized because the only ethnicity being focused on, it's on the Muslims. And so we are re-marginalizing those that we were just first beginning to bring out. And there we have the same example as like Black Lives Matter and the fact that what is being done to our black students and our young people, the same problem exists because the Muslim organization is very smart. They are drawing into them, into their violence, into the mentality of victimization. They're taking out the Latinos that were finally coming into mainstream, and they are all now part of this, and it's a very dangerous mixture because I don't think it's inexplainable, but I try to be polite about it. So there's an inexplainable level of violence. Well, if you read the Quran, it's not inexplainable. It's in their blood. It's in their blood. But you have anger levels in other ethnicities that anger levels are being played upon through that. So you have a major problem, and it's being taught. It's not being learned out in the streets and on the street corners. It's being taught, and it's being given legitimacy. And in the textbooks, there are these horrible questions that are for building students' ability to reason. And we work with the publishing houses because if you're not teaching the fact, they can't reason. But if you're teaching the bigotry and the bias, that's how you're teaching them, and that's what's coming out. Then, as concerns us, the word terrorism has become one of the dirty words. It was one of the issues at the board meeting on Tuesday, that no, you can't, you should not use the word terrorism because it implies that we're talking about Islamist terrorism. So instead of terrorism was the motion to change the word and use extremism. Well, it's not the same thing. So the defining terrorism in broad, vague terms based solely on political aims and excluding the intentional targeting of civilians from the definition. So when you read 9/11, anything about 9/11, it becomes, oh, well, the Muslims are unhappy with the philosophy and the government of the United States and on the political aims of the United States, and oil has been an issue, and then the support of the only democracy in the Middle East right now, which is Israel. So terrorism is just that. It has to do with political aims, nothing about targeting the civilians. Well, then someone explained to me the 400, almost 500 missiles that went from Gaza into Ashkelon, and it wasn't, there were no political aims, they targeted the people. And so, it's very difficult to prove to me that that terrorism does not include the targeting of civilians. And then the last two, I'm going to skip down to the last one. This is a major problem, which is the elimination of U.S. exceptionalism. We've always had U.S. exceptionalism in our textbooks, dealing with the wars, dealing with what we've done in Europe, dealing with how we conduct ourselves as a nation state, and it's gone. And it's not only gone, but it is replaced with, we are not the nation that we really are, because when you remove exceptionalism and you remove the standards by which most of what we've done in Europe and the rest of the world is the exceptionalism, you replace it by political aims, and you replace it by a form of dictatorship and American exceptionalism. We're trying to put it back in. And then in that sentence, Eurocentrism is what we grew up with in the schools. Eurocentrism is that our civilization came out of Europe, came Greek, Roman, and that's Eurocentrism. That's why you study Shakespeare, that's why you study Chaucer, that's why you study Kierkegaard. It's Eurocentric. That's the ethnicity, that's the background of this country. And then to make sure, then you bring in the writers and the history of the rest of the world. But Eurocentrism has been removed, and we're now living under Afrocentrism, which is very difficult because the first time it happened, I was teaching at Fordham University, and it was announced that Chaucer was being removed from the curriculum, and that Shakespeare would follow. So I thought, I know my students are tired. My students don't want to bother with the English of Chaucer, but I cannot believe that Fordham University, which is a very fine, expensive Jesuit university, is removing Chaucer because you have some lazy students. And it was then announced that we are, now we have the verbiage of he's too white. It's too white. The authors are too white. The country's too white. All right. So the way that is fixed correctly is that you have across the board, but people of value, writers of value, countries of value. You don't, said, my goodness, Chaucer. It's like, like they're toppling all of the different statues. It's all the same thing. So those are two parallels. No U.S. exceptionalism and Eurocentrism being replaced by Afrocentrism, not being augmented by the ideal teaching world would be Eurocentrism and Afrocentrism, not merging, but side by side, so you get the best out of each. The next to the last one is something that I opened the study of, which is the omission and or misrepresentation of the origins of the 9/11 jihadist attacks on America, because in 2002, I went to the 2001 textbooks to see what was in them on 9/11. And I said, these are American publishing houses, I don't care where they get their money, they're being bought in this country, sold in this country, schools are getting the federal funds to pay for textbooks, and what I found was a total whitewashing of 9/11. It's not that they forgot, but the unwillingness and the refusal to name jihadists, to name the terrorists as jihadists. And in addition to that was the most sickening comparison of 9/11 and Pearl Harbor, with the blame put on American politics for both. That if the United States had not tried to censure Japan and bring pressure on it economically, Japan would never have bombed Pearl Harbor. And if America were not backing Israel and the free world and that, then there would never have been an attack on 9/11. So these are troubling trends in the textbooks, and this is what you know, if you you need to know about it. And then I'm going to close with one. I have a book that I want to talk to you about in all seriousness. I mean, not that this isn't serious, but this is a book which is the roadmap of the future, but the future is here. It's Pearson. Now, Pearson, Prentice Hall, there have been mergers and unmergers, so it's now Pearson again, but it is the most egregiously flawed, it produces the most egregiously flawed textbooks. It is the most anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, left-wing, liberal, by being liberal, meaning promoting the liberal views, publishing house. They put out a book, just came out last year, and it's the AP books, the advanced placement, so it's aimed at our smartest and our brightest kids. It doesn't matter because it could be aimed at any child, but being AP, they put more in and they develop it much more. And it came out in 2017. It's called The Cultural Landscape, An Introduction to Human Geography. The name of the book just sent alarm in me because cultural landscape, you don't have human geography. Human geography is like when you're moving people, you're hurting people, they become numbers. And I said to myself, this is Pearson and I'm in for a problem. And there are many problems, but I want to speak to the main one because there are the equivalency, how they work very hard to make the equivalency between the Muslim students and the Orthodox Jewish. They dress in black, and they build the equivalency just as they built the equivalency Sharia law and the Talmud and the Tanakh. So they build the equivalency. Look at the modesty of the Arab women dressed in black. Look at the modesty of the ultra-Orthodox, and they didn't know ultra-Orthodox from Orthodox, but that was the least of the problems. And so I said, okay, I can handle that. And I'm telling you now, honestly, that I have seen an awful lot, and I've done an awful lot, and I've swallowed a lot. But I looked at this, and I said, it's happened. What Hitler tried to do, publishing house, has just finished. Because Pearson Prentice Hall has now come out with the new world religions. Now, when we went to school, the world religions were in chronological order. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and then Buddhism and Hinduism. But The world religions were always Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And then came the how many pages devoted to which religion. That was, you know, we could prove bias and slant by the fact that they put Islam, they did Judaism and Christianity in elementary school through the 6th grade. So it was split in one chapter with those pages, and then started where Islam had entire chapters in the 7th grade book and no material on Judaism and Christianity. So we've gone through some changes. But I would like to tell you, and you're in a church filled with spirituality where you asked for the presence of Jesus to be here, and the presence of God. This is something which I consider the most major crisis that Judaism and Christianity will ever have. Because the world religions, Judaism is no longer a world religion. Judaism is down in a 4th category called other religions, along with Spiritism. The largest religions, the order of the world religions now, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism. And I said, okay. Then come the folk religions, traditional Chinese, primal indigenous, and African traditional. Those are the folk religions. Then comes this category, other religions. And listen to the order of them. There's a religion, and I'm not sure of the pronunciation, Juche, it's Juchte. That's number 1. Number 2 is Judaism. Number 3 is Sikhism. And number 4 is Spiritism. Then there are others, 6 others that they least give credit in existence, including Jainism and Shinto. And then there's this group called unaffiliated. Okay? There's and I know unaffiliated, when you say you're an unaffiliated Jew, you don't join a specific synagogue. And if you're an unaffiliated Catholic, you walk into any Catholic church, you take Mass, and you go out. You're not attached to a building with a name, to a certain rabbi, to a certain minister, to a certain pastor. You're just not affiliated, but you do believe in something. If we look at the growth of atheism, in my feeling that unaffiliated means that is the body that is growing of atheists in this country, and they are open market. Now, I looked at this and I said, I would like to know how Pearson did this. Pearson has very, I would say some very fine writers, but they had someone who was brilliant in this. The only way you could break the backbone of the world religions from Judaism and Christianity and then Islam. And we had a battle, you had to work on the chronology, because with the birth of Islam, all of a sudden the chronology of the world religions, Christianity, then Islam, then Judaism, then Islam, then Judaism, then Christianity. And you know, they didn't know how to read, so we could always say, chronologically speaking, that's the wrong order. But what they've done now is to develop the marketability of the new world religions by the number of adherents per religion. How many practicing co-religionists there are. So if you look at it that way, Christianity is still first, but it will not be. Slaughter of Christians. And this forced slaughter of the Christians is eliminating and lowering the number of Christians in the world. And the Christians that is part of this. This is how, and to me it's very, very clear. They say it's ISIS. It's the part of the revenge for the Crusades. It's the part of the reestablishment of the Caliphate. But the only way you can dominate Christianity is to remove the number of Christians. And it's a different story with, they did a wonderful job if you stop to think of 6 million Jews eliminated just like that. We have paid with big numbers, and we're going to still pay with numbers, because of what Iran is promising. we will have another form of a Holocaust over there. But what I'm concerned with is the lack of response in this country to the slaughter of the Christians, because that is one religion, I don't care what language they speak, to eliminate that and not to speak out, and then to find a publishing house of the stature, when I'm not speaking of that I believe in them, they have a stature though, they sell a lot of books, and they've been in the business for a long time, but that they come up with, I think it's a diabolical plan, that they have removed the concept of world religion with its contributions to civilization, with the cultures, with the essence of Judaism and the essence of, I mean, with Christianity, there used to be the pages on the difference between when you go into the Catholic Church, and there was always the breakdown so people would understand, and instead it's like, first of all, a couple of the publishing houses have created new religions. I mean, the version of Judaism, I said, wow, I missed that somewhere in time. This came out and nobody told me about it. And then I said, let me see what's happened to Christianity. And it's happening. And you now have a textbook that has everything depending on the number of adherents. We used to use the term congregants. They use a mathematical, everything is cold, numerical, and it's soulless. And you look at this, and this is not the future. This is the present. You know, this is the present. And when you look at the maps, what they've done, they eliminated Judaism as a world religion and therefore eviscerated the Jewish people. Because on the map, there are no Jews in Latin America, there are no Jews in some of the countries. And what they've done, with their numbers, 14 million Jews live in the United States, 2/5 of the world's 14 million Jews live in the United States. There are 14 million Jews left after Hitler. To have gone back up to 14 million Jews around the world is you know, we're doing our best to make babies, but it's not for the purpose of taking over the world. It's for the purpose of the survival of the religion. And another, the 2/5 live in Israel. Now, how do you eliminate it as a world religion and explain the contributions to Western civilization? It's very simple, because if the caliphate replaces Western civilization, you have no need to talk about Western civilization, the Greeks, the Romans, anybody. So this is, you know, this is what I wanted to tell you and to have you, when I say to understand, I'm not speaking down, to understand that you have the right to ask questions of your Board of Education. You have the right to know what they are teaching, what agendas they are putting forth. You have the right to know why we're having such problems maintaining the stature of this country. You have the right to know why we're becoming socialist because we don't know what's in the book. It's your God-given right, and it's the right, and literally God-given if you look at the Constitution and all of that. It's our right to know, but you have to be brave enough. You know, I was raised as a Jew during the era where the Jews were told, you have it good in America, don't rock the boat. Don't rock it. We were raised with that. Don't rock the boat. And unfortunately, I not only rocked it, I sank it. So and I take full credit for any mistakes I've made, because no one was going to tell me that I could not rock the boat by asking a question. And your education system, what is happening, it's bad enough what I heard with the state board, but what Kat told me about San Angelo, you are being deprived of your rights, and your children, your grandchildren, your friends, whatever, and it doesn't matter to whom the child belongs. At the end of the day, all of the children belong to us. And we have to make sure that we're looking out. We can't be very personal about this, and we cannot look and say, well, it's not mine and it's somebody else's problem. I don't have children, why do I have to worry? They are our children. Doesn't matter what religion, what ethnicity, what color. It doesn't matter tall, short, fat. It doesn't matter whether they speak correctly. Well, they should if they were taught English correctly. But this, what is here, what Kat told me about, and then I have thanks to you gave me the material, which I'm still reading because I fell asleep while I was reading it. Not that I was bored, but I haven't slept much. But I'm asking you, and I'm to remember your rights, to remember that no one can say when it comes to public education, you do not have the need to know. This is public education. This is your tax money. This is your life. And this is your country, and these are your children. So this is what is in the textbooks, and this is what I really came, besides just to see you, to tell you, and I hope that I brought some information to you. It's very important. This is a church. You don't want to wake up one morning and find out that it's a mosque. Like I found out in my synagogue in Bayside, when it could no longer sustain itself. It had to be sold. And so I'm telling you that that's the most horrible feeling in the world. It's like you don't want to wake up and find out one day that the spirituality here is now taken over by the enemy. And you don't want to wake up one day and find out that your children are socialists, that your children hate democracy, and that if you are how you are, your children, your grandchildren, and anyone else, you won't have Christmas, you won't have Easter, you won't have the 4th of July, you won't have Thanksgiving, and you won't have America. And so this is your right in this country, whether you were born here, you immigrated here, you're a citizen, you're a permanent resident. This country belongs to us, and there was a lot of blood lost and shed to make sure of that. And when Veterans Day is no longer important, and when the Cinco de Mayo is equal to, yes, it's an ethnic holiday that it's nice to study it, but not to replace the Memorial Day, not to replace Veterans Day. These are things that are part of your forefathers. They should be passed down. They shouldn't disappear. And when something disappears out of a textbook, it's almost impossible to put it back in. But even if you put it back in, you cannot, like on a car, 10 years later, have a recall for a part and call back these kids and say, whoops, we made a mistake. You have to learn this. So as we're approaching Thanksgiving and you're approaching Christmas and I'm approaching Hanukkah, that's my prayer and my wish, that you have your church, you have your spirituality, you have your Christianity, and you have your America. And when we sing God Bless America, we are putting the two together. We're putting God together with America, and that is my concern with what is happening in education today.
Hello. While I'm thinking about it, can we get a couple of mics in the aisles for Q&A, Richard? Wow, lots of information. I know y'all have some questions. And while we have this wonderful resource here, get your questions ready for sure. But before we start the Q&A, I'd like to encourage you to consider what you could sow into the work that Sandra is doing. This is a vital work. It has to continue. It's got to be sustained. The countless hours that she pours into the research to preserve truth can't have a price put on it. The work is not being funded by foundations or grants or some rich philanthropist. This work has been made possible by love offerings from citizens like you and me since its inception. So prayerfully consider what you would like to sow into this work, and the men are going to begin passing the buckets around. But hasn't this been fascinating? Yes. Okay. What she was saying, since she doesn't have the mic and this is all being videoed, live streamed, hello world out there, is equal to a love offering would be if any of y'all have a contact of someone who could help with some type of sustainable funding. Because we're really at a crisis point. I know many of y'all have heard Roy White that I've had in, and this work needs to be continued. And you never know who might have the perfect contact here in this room who could, do $10,000 a year or whatever. Several people like that would be a good beginning, along with grant writing and other things along that line. Grants is a little challenging to get in this particular field because so many of the foundations have been changed. Let's just put it that way. If you are going to write a check, make it to the Christian Reporter News, and then I will write one check to her so that she's not having to, well, she doesn't have to worry about it, so she can just merrily go back to Israel when, in a few days when her plane takes her there. One of the things while the guys are passing the buckets is I wanted to let you know is we have Elizabeth Savage Wolf coming in less than 2 weeks. When these international people say, hey, I'm going to be in the States, you have to scramble and book them while they're here. Elizabeth, as many of y'all know, was here in May and shared about the freedom of speech and that really isn't existing in Austria. Well, actually it was about 3 weeks ago, she was reading the news just like all of us, and she read the decision that was made on her ruling that had been moved all the way up to what would be like an equivalent of the Supreme Court, European Supreme Court. And her appeal was not overturned, it was upheld. And that day, the news wires all through Europe, and I was getting them left and right, it was like freedom of speech has died. And so she's coming, she will be here on Tuesday, November the 27th at 6:30. Freedom Fellowship will be our host location again. I highly encourage you to come. We have got to really understand, it lines up with what Sandra is saying. We don't begin to really understand what's going on. Guys, I started talking about this 3.5 years ago to this community, and it is coming like a snowball express now to us. And if we don't do some specific things to stop it, it's going to be here. And as she was saying, churches will turn into mosques. Elizabeth always says, it's the saddest goodbye at our airport, because she said, okay, Kat, I have to stop talking now. And what she means is, I can't talk from my heart or my mind anymore. I can only say what's acceptable or I'll be arrested. We have no idea. So anyway, if you have a question, we have mics now in the aisles, since this is being videoed, and we have a live audience out there in the world that are listening. If you would please go to the microphone. Sandra, if you would come back up, I'd like to hand this back over to you so you can handle all these questions. So make a line and get ready, girl.
Dr. Alfonsi?
Yes, I was.
I have a question, or actually a request. Would you give us your input on how our country has changed from the original founders making the stipulation that our government will not dictate our religion to freedom from religion? Instead of freedom of religion, we're now a country, freedom from religion, where they want to take religion away out of the schools, out of the public place, and not allow God's name to be mentioned. And how this evolved through the incorrect teachings in our universities, in the law schools of our universities, how it started there, and it has, because we have now judges and lawyers and things that have come up in those institutions, it's now held as the truth because of the way that it's evolved over the last few decades.
I think that your wording is exceptional, because that is to designate freedom of religion and freedom from religion. I do believe, and I'm answering just as I'm thinking about it, that is the sign of atheism, and that is a sign of socialism. And that is an exchange of vocabulary, because freedom of religion means that we have the right to choose our religion. Freedom from religion means to deny religion to people who want it. And to me, that is the first lawsuits. I mean, you worded it so exquisitely, because when you started, I thought, okay, I have to, and then you put the vocabulary. To me, that is the question that came with the first lawsuits. If we look at the first lawsuits, they were to remove any visible signs of Christianity and Judaism from the schools. Now that, if they removed them together, that would be the idea of equality. But I think that the first major lawsuit was put forth by an atheist. And I think that differentiation now between freedom of and freedom from, I think that the word that doesn't belong is the word freedom, because it's freedom of religion, it's the freedom to choose your religion, but it's when freedom from is actually the removal of religion altogether. And there are only two forces. Now, socialism didn't just rise up during this election. It hasn't even been creeping. It has been growing, and it has been growing, as has been that we can speak even about the Bolshevik revolution, and we can start speaking about that again. It means it never went away, and that it's been festering underneath. But I think that what you've said, now the universities and the law, when those who have the same indoctrination bring that indoctrination into every walk of life. But if I were to say, but it's not really offhand, I mean, it must be somewhere in there, that those are signs of two forces in this country. And the atheists, the big lawsuit, and she won each time, it was not a question of, she's free to be an atheist, but I'm free to be a Jew and you're free to be a Christian. But that is not what atheism is. Atheism is a denial of God. And I think that is the difference between freedom of religion and freedom from. And the one thing we could be really sure of, without going in a time machine backwards, is that the founding fathers were not trying to create freedom from religion, that this would be a godless state, a godless country. And I think that is where it comes from, and I think that is the major push. Now will be an interesting thing to see, because for the Muslim world and Sharia law to fit in, they're going to have to agree to not be in the schools, and they will not agree not to be in the schools. So this is going to be a legal battle that'll be very interesting, because Sharia law does not, that will not happen. But that's my take on that, and I think that looking at the last election and the pre-election, and the sudden force that socialism, and it's in the universities, and it's in the textbooks, so therefore it's in the junior, senior high school. And atheism is being taught. I mean, the only way you can teach someone to be an atheist, that's something else, but to teach the principles of atheism, and as an atheist, I am entitled, yes, you are entitled to be an atheist, but the person sitting next to you is entitled. And it's part, and that's what I think it comes from. And I think that's why I believe that last category of unaffiliated, those I think are meant to be the atheists, because they're literally not affiliated with God or any house thereof. Okay? Hi there.
I was just going to observe that a sign of the changing times is that God Bless America was written by a Jew by the name of Irving Berlin.
Yeah. Well, if we keep God Bless America and we keep the Star Spangled Banner, we'll be doing very well. And I'm glad he wrote it. He also wrote some beautiful Christmas music, so he was multifaceted and diversified, and a very good musician.
Having been both a high school and college teacher, I realize that the people that are influencing our students are coming out of colleges and from teacher classes. And so I'd like for you to address the college textbooks, because if we were to have teachers that really had truth from colleges, then they could impart regardless of what the high school book said.
Okay, that will never happen in any of our lifetime, because the high school, the public school had over the years something called a book barn. And what a book barn was just that there were people who would write chapters for the textbooks, but it did not necessarily mean that the person who wrote the chapter for history was a historian. It was somebody just wrote that. We had the book barns, and we had a very difficult time with them. Now that doesn't exist anymore, so theoretically the books should be better. But now we have agenda-built and agenda-functioning publishing houses, and we have bias, and we have the word that nobody likes to use. We have everything that is agenda-based. But we do have the ability to work with the publishing houses and demand that books be changed. When it comes to the university, to the colleges, they have no standardization of textbooks. And therefore, any professor who wants to write a book with his own left-wing philosophy writes the book and teaches the course with his books. So there isn't any, tenure is the weapon that everyone has to become permanent on the staff. But when it comes to textbooks, there is nothing. There is absolutely no code. The way to prove it to you is that I did a 4-year study of doctoral dissertations in this country, and what it proves is that the chairman of the department agree upon or disagree upon the theoretical research, and that the doctoral dissertations that are flawed, they're biased, they're agenda biased, a lot of them are anti-American, and they're coming out of our universities, but they are approved, and they become viable research. When the doctorate is given, those dissertations, they're given the legitimate numbers for the Library of Congress. They're sold as reliable historical references. And so therefore, there is anything that you think will be coming out of the college campus will not be coming out of the college campus. The college campus, let's forget history for a moment and talk about literature. The change away from Eurocentrism means that the literature that's being taught is not the literature that we grew with. And what is being, like the whole women's literature movement, it's not for the purpose of teaching equality for women. It has its own agenda, which is basically There's a lot of socialism, there's anarchy, a lot of the textbook, a lot of the books on the college campus teach anarchy. And if you wait long enough, the high school, senior high school books have the same thing, just watered down a little bit. But in the history, in history, global history, world history, when we get into political science, all those subject matters on the university level, those books are not checked by anyone, whether they have faults in them or not. They are written by, and they're often self-authored by the professors, and there isn't any standard because when you ask questions in a college course, you fail yourself, and the students know that. And the fact that here, Kat said to me that the parents can't see the tests and the questions on the tests, that is not for the good of humanity, that is an agenda. But when you come, and it's a little bit easier to fight the grades to fight the problem in junior and senior high school, but parents are not willing to do that either because they are afraid that their child will be punished and the grade will be low. And so there's an entire problem of ethics when it comes to that. But on the college campus, in political science, in history, in world history, all of that, those books are mainly left-wing, they're mainly agenda-based. The research that they have to do, their research papers, if they use doctoral dissertations, which are then accepted, that is as flawed as the material. So there isn't going to be a solution. Unfortunately, as an academic, as someone who teaches on the university level, and I teach language and literature, and I've seen the same thing, because instead of being able to teach in French literature, French masters, and let's take someone like Mérimée as an example, I wasn't able because they represented a country that colonialized in Africa, and therefore I couldn't use a French author that wrote a novel which was actual what happened on the African continent, because it was considered to be, it was propaganda, but I needed to use the African writers. Now there were some that were very talented. Some of the French were so bad that it boggled my mind what he was trying to say, but it didn't matter, because what happened there was the attack on France, the attack on Western civilization. So you have everything being turned inside out. There is no accountability, and the only way we take back accountability will not be on the college campus. It has to be taken back in the public school system, and I didn't think I would ever hear myself say it goes as far down as first and second grade, but the accountability has to go in reverse. We have to start at the beginning, reestablish the accountability, reestablish the testing, Kat was telling me what percentage of the standards at San Angelo, and we had a discussion back there, and my mouth was open because you were telling me, you told me, but that to me, I said, how can you get a passing with 39%? And you look at all of these, and you have to understand that as goes the public school system, you've already lost the college campus. The college campus is lost, and we have to understand that. So if there's ever going to be the chance of fixing a college campus, we have to fix this first, because there is no fixability. And I'm saying that it's painful, but the reality is the college campus cannot be fixed because it has been bought and paid for by Arab petrol dollars. And there is no way to make that sound nice. There isn't any question. We have sold our soul for the dollar. And that doesn't ensure capitalism. It doesn't ensure anything but what we're looking at right now. But there's I can't even say there's no quick fix. As I see the higher education, the university system, it is so broken. It is pathetically broken. If you look at the at those who were the provosts or the presidents of the universities, and you see by whom they've been replaced, and you see the ones who are coming in, especially if you look at political science and such, we are the bastion of left-wing philosophy. And we have, I don't like to make it sound, but it is such, we have almost no ethics and we have almost no morality. And that is the college campus. And when you look at the use of the funding, parents, you send your child to college, you pay student academic fees to pay for student groups. Look at what the money is funding. Look at the violence of the groups, Students for Justice in Palestine. Name one group after another and look at the violence. Look at what's being taught. Look at the new course offerings. If you're no longer Eurocentric, your course offerings are no longer the same. If you look for your extracurricular activities, they're completely different. And there isn't any, the biggest problem in my mind is the fact that what happened to the universities, it's one thing, but when the most well-known and most important Catholic universities, when there's stories swiveling around the Yeshiva University, where the ethics and the morality and the standards should be imposed not only on the students but on the faculty and on the administration, when you don't have that. So my feeling is, and I'm very proud of the fact of the work that I do, and if I, if I work for almost nothing, and if I were independently wealthy, I would continue that, but it's not exactly the way to live. I will never stop doing this because we have only two weapons. One is to fix the textbooks, and the other is to have an army of our parents, of our people, whether they're parents or not, it makes no difference. As long as you can vote in this country, that is part of your right, and the only way we can fix, the last place we can even think about fixing is the college campus, because everyone is an individual. There are no state standards. There's no state curriculum. You can't question why something has been written out of a curriculum because the person who's teaching it writes it. Oh, I don't want to teach that. I don't like that. But you have the only weapon is we do the textbooks, and we bombard, to use a polite word, we bombard the state boards of education, the superintendents of education, the school boards, and anybody who doesn't want to listen to us will have to listen to us. That's the only way to fix this. And it's not going to be fixed tomorrow, because this is a very big country, and when you look at the midterm elections, we now have the enemy within the Congress. And there was a time when you could go to the state legislators and you would bring the problem. And that, I think, unfortunately, is not the state that our state of the union is in.
I am so glad you're here, and I could listen to you and discuss things with you for another 4 hours. Easy.
I'll have to take my shoes off of you.
Yeah, I know.
There we go, here we go. I'm ready.
Monday night, my husband and I went to the school board meeting, and we got into a discussion with one of the board members. Unfortunately, she's not here tonight. And she was, oh, Amy, are you here? Amy's there. Oh, good, I'm glad you're here. Because she kind of answered a question when we were talking about your children and their textbooks and going into the other sources. Made me think about, oh, what kind of sources are your kids going back to? Which viewpoint are they looking for? And how do we find out where we can find out what those sources actually say?
First of all, I caution you and I ask you to understand that on one hand, the internet is a marvelous tool. However, the extraneous extracurricular materials that are being brought into the school are being brought from the internet for two reasons: the facility of finding them, and because they have the bias and the agenda waiting. It's very difficult to find the unagenda, no agenda, and the material from the internet. My ideas on sources, I still believe that we go back to bona fide research, and we use their bibliographies, we use their footnotes, and we find sources of references that way. And that's what I do more and more when I work with the textbooks, because the textbooks in the junior and senior, our books have no footnotes, no bibliography. They tell you how to find, I mean, one book said that the presidents on the dollars, those are original, those are original sources, because, and I said, no, this president was not, this was not minted when this man was president, so it is not an original source. So what I try to do is to actually, you can learn, it's not hard to learn, you can learn to recognize viable internet resources. If you find one website or you find a well-documented article, I use a lot of those to find additional sources, because I said, well, this man, I know this work is correct, therefore there are sources in the man's bibliography or in the footnotes. And the most easily found and most terrific source is Wikipedia. And so, I mean, I ban, like, anyone that I teach to be a reviewer of textbooks cannot use Wikipedia, but at the same time I teach them how to find a source and use that source as a resource with it. And I'm a great believer in using other people's bibliographies.
How many school systems have you gone and done this reviewing for?
4 states, and the general population, the 25 years that I did with Hadassah was for the United States in general. I worked with the publishing houses, and then I went out to California and I worked with groups there. I down into Washington, but this experience with Texas is my first full experience with a state school board, because we got into the fact there are 22 states that have the state textbook adoption process, and I always believed that that is where we should be. Unfortunately, my organization, Hadassah, was afraid of it, and it became left-leaning, but they were afraid of, rattling the boat. But basically, this is the first time where I've been allowed to address a State Board of Education, but it came from the fact that I've corrected a lot of books for Texas. And when there's been an emergency, they've called, will I do something in a hurry for them on a book? But I would say that on the state system, I've done Texas, I've done Florida, I've done North Carolina, I've done Tennessee, and I did the state guidelines for the state of California, which is where I found that one of the biggest corruption in that, because by doing the guidelines that they were giving, they gave the guidelines that instead, like the TEKS, the publishing houses have to adhere to the TEKS, and then we have to keep the TEKS honest. What California does is prepare their agenda-based guidelines for the publishing houses to do. So that is a problem that's not going to be fixed. But that's the best I can answer you.
And last night I went to a meeting where it was on how to testify before a house committee or Senate committee. And they said you are limited to 2 minutes.
Oh, yes.
And you testified, yesterday, I believe?
Tuesday.
Tuesday? And how did your testimony go? And then I'll go sit down.
No, you don't have to sit. I'm happy to tell you how it went, because I had a 2-minute limit. The question that I was doing was I was I was agreeing with the State Board of Education, wanting to keep in the wording that the Arab world, well, I added the world, but the Arabs were responsible for the Arab-Israeli crisis, and it was worded such. And they knew that CARE would come and left-wing organizations would come, and so I was asked to come. But there was 2-minute limits. Well, I worked with Roy White, and so what I kept timing mine, and I took sentences out and gave it to him, because he was going to testify. And I had 2 minutes, but no one told me that I had to introduce myself. So I introduced myself, used up about half a minute, maybe a minute of my time. And then I started getting gonged, and a gong, and a gong, and I just kept talking. And then I said, well, I skipped over things, and but I could see the way the board was listening, and it's like, you know, you pray that Jesus was in the room during this meeting, and I'm going, I need help. and God provided the help in several of the board members, but one board member, Ken Mercer, and he said, Dr. Alfonsi, I'm going to ask you the questions so that no one else asked me questions, and he opened up the floor, and I spoke for close to 15 minutes on everything. And it was very important, because I wanted the board to know that the Arab-Israeli conflict is not the Israeli-Palestinian, it is the Arab-Israeli conflict, that it was started by the Arab world, and it was started actually by the Arab League in 1947, when 5 countries attacked Israel, and I gave the whole thing, and I spoke in favor with the whole history of every time Israel offered to give land, and each time every peace treaty was broken, and I had to cut because I ran out of time. But the weapon that we have that nobody tells you about is you have to present the handout of your testimony to every board member. So what they had was everything that I had prepared. So they saw right away that I cut short with one sentence what I had prepared on the Oslo Accord, because the Oslo Accord is being really used to do a lot of damage by CARE, and what they're saying is factually incorrect. So because God was there, I mean, and he's, you know, there this man opened the floor to me, and there were no gongs, and I said everything, and then the boards sat and listened. So it went, then Roy and I stayed for the deliberations, and then until the final vote, and there were 15 members, 4 against, and 11 in favor. So, and the 4 against made sure, we don't hate Israel, but we're worried that the children are going to be bullied, and that was the Palestinian narrative. But that's how it went. So when you do testify, they're going, another thing I learned, very important, when the State Board of Education makes an announcement of hearings and asks for public comments on changes to the TEKS, you write it carefully, you send it in, because they counted, physically counted the number of public comments, and they put things back in based on the public comments and the material. But they don't want to, I don't think that they advertise the fact, but I sat there and I thought, there is an actual weapon when you get the notice, and it's something, I mean, the changes to take Helen Keller out of the TEKS, the changes to take the WASPs, the first women aviators, all of that, between the people who came to speak, the testimony, but the number of public comments, no attacks on the board, nothing. Reasonable, factual, why this needs to be taught to the students, why it has to be put back in. And don't be bowled over by the use of the word, we have to streamline. Streamlining. The teachers are complaining there's too much to teach. So you teach the teachers how to prioritize, but you don't look at the word streamlining, because streamlining is good vocabulary for an agenda. Oh, we have to streamline. So we take out what's not acceptable, and we leave in, or we put in, Some of the things were quite unusual, but that's the way it went. But when you do testify, you make sure that you have to provide it. You fine-tooth, you fine-hone what you've written, so that if you get gonged and you have to leave some of the material out, every board member has in front of him or her your testimony. And then you know that if you do testify, the board is entitled to ask you questions. So you make sure that you're not excited. You make sure you know what you want to say, so that if they question you, and they question you on what you said or what you didn't say, and in my case, this man, this angel, he opened the floor to me. He opened the floor and everything, and the strangest thing is not only not streamlining, they wanted to eliminate the whole thing and just put the Arab-Israeli conflict under tensions during the birth of nations. Just stick it up under crises when nations came to pass, or stick Arab-Israeli conflict, nothing else. And instead of doing that, and instead of getting the wording, which was, it was an okay wording when I spoke in favor, another board member realized he had listened, and I knew he had listened because he picked up my vocabulary on the Arab League, and the fact that I said, I'm not referring to Muslims, I'm using the word Arab world. There can't be any bullying. Nobody, what, are you going to walk in and you're going to bully a kid, say you come from the Arab world, therefore go out? No, but they fell into the vocabulary. But the other board member reworded it and gave a wording to this that was far better than the original one. And this has given us, and I'm writing a letter to the board because I now have a weapon with the publishing houses on the sub-chapters that are called Arab-Israeli conflict. I now can say that the State Board of Education of the state of Texas has put the following language into its TEKS, and I want the following language in your textbook. So if you put what you want and you're careful, testifying is very important. But when there is any kind of call for public comments, it's not a time to be abusive, it's not a time to tell the board it's stupid, it's not a time for anything but to put forward, Helen Keller should not be removed from the teaching because we need the role models for the women with the WASP, the women early aviators. You have to be precise, but they counted. I was amazed because that day 50 more came in by email. So they had close to 100 on certain issues. And that's your right.